Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Team C is comprised of myself, Rabiya, Amanda, and Robert. Today we'll be exploring the very relevant topic of conflict in the virtual workplace, its likelihood, how to prevent it, and if needed, how to resolve it. Conflict is inevitable. In our professional lives, it can be detrimental to accomplishing organizational objectives. Conflict is only exacerbated in virtual environments, where physical interaction rarely exists, which is actually a helpful tool in mitigating the impact of conflict. Our research is framed around identity-based sources of conflict, particularly culture, gender, education, and experience. It's important for leaders, and frankly all participants, in a virtual work environment to understand these sources of conflict, the implications of managing people with different identities, and to minimize any conflict that may result from these differences. Amanda will start us off by introducing culture as a trigger for conflict in the virtual workplace. I will then explore gender, and Bob will continue with education and experience as identity-based sources of conflict.
Thank you, Rabiya. And hello, everyone. Culture is an all-inclusive system of communication. Culture is a way of life, including aspects such as expected behavior, beliefs, values, language, and living practices shared by members of a society. Team members with cultural differences can have vastly different communication styles, as well as different ways of understanding and conveying information. Oftentimes, these cultural differences can lead to tension between virtual team members, as well as create obstacles to communication and the development of stable working relationships. Recognition of cultural differences and varied communication styles will enable a virtual team to perform to its full potential. Cultural intelligence is an individual's ability to understand cultural and organizational differences and adapt successfully in cross-cultural environments. The concept of cultural intelligence within business and organizational behavior has steadily gained importance in the management world. Amidst globalization, corporations are expanding across national borders and encountering new customs and cultures, but are often unable to adapt to new cultural contexts. Cultural intelligence has become a requirement for leaders and employees in today's globalized economy. Ideally, leaders and employees from different countries will utilize skills of cultural intelligence to pick up on subtle differences such as body language and mannerisms and adopt them to embrace new cultures. Conflict in the workplace, as many of us have seen or experienced, is something that occurs on a daily basis. One reason that conflict can be experienced in the workplace is because of an increase in cultural diversity of its members, which increases the potential for culturally based conflicts. There is great potential for different types of cultural conflicts to occur. However, I will discuss just a few. First, we have different value system conflicts. These can become a big issue that can be at times very difficult to resolve. Values can explain what a person considers right and wrong, or good and bad, and includes cultural differences, morals, and opinions. When people's values differ, conflict may arise, and any difficulty solving the conflict can lead to a lack of cohesion or miscommunication within a group. This type of conflict usually arises as a result of strong beliefs in one's own values. These views are firm and lead to an unwillingness to compromise or negotiate with others. Second, we have preconceptions and stereotyping. Stereotyping is a generalization about a certain group of people or social category, which can be both positive and negative. Stereotypes are made every day about different groups of people based on qualities such as race, gender, social status, or profession. This can lead to illogical categorization of people or their characteristics. In many cases, stereotypes will create a difficult climate in virtual teams and limit the team's effectiveness. This is a result of the cultural values, beliefs, and norms of individual team members. And last, we have attitudes towards work. Attitude is a construct that is theoretically assumed to be based on or manifest itself from beliefs, values, perception, knowledge, which influences human behaviors. Attitudes can affect business practices, ethics, expectations, and behavior of team members. If the professional habits of an individual are noticeably different from others in the team due to culture, It may be a challenge for management to alter or integrate these habits so they will be conducive to the team's performance and processes. This can cause major delays, as tasks are not or could not be completed satisfactorily or in a timely manner. Culturally diverse virtual teams must overcome many challenges to become efficient and effective in today's world, starting with time differences and language barriers through to profound cultural issues. Companies must invest in advanced means of communication as well as education and training for the team members to help overcome these issues. A fundamental step in preventing conflicts among employees is through the development of cultural intelligence. An individual with cultural intelligence will be able to recognize and adapt to cultural differences. In today's globalized economy, this skill is more important than ever. Cultural intelligence plays an important role for both leaders and followers of an organization. High levels of cultural intelligence will facilitate the process of integration, creating a more cohesive team culture that combines the strengths of all employees and encourages everyone to work towards a common goal. And now I'll hand it over to Rabiya.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I'll now move on to gender as a source of conflict. Gender infiltrates every aspect of our existence, the workplace being no exception, where gender discrimination has traditionally been a source of conflict. In the workplace, gender discrimination takes on many forms, including the glass ceiling, discrimination as a result of pregnancy, as a result of physical appearance, and as a result of gender stereotypes and expectations. In the virtual workplace, gender-based conflicts are manifested as a result of sexism, sexual harassment, and power imbalances. Examples include male team members criticizing female teammates for certain behaviors while ignoring male teammates who behave likewise. Male leaders being aware of competing priorities of women and assuming that their work is going to suffer as a result, and therefore not offering them the same opportunities as men, as well as the imposition of traditional gender roles on women in the workplace by expecting them to complete secretarial work such as drafting meeting minutes, serving coffee, etc., among colleagues on the same team and at the same level. In order to prevent conflicts due to gender, organizations must prioritize gender equality at every level, from the recruitment process through to professional development. This would entail the consistent monitoring and evaluation of salaries and promotions to ensure there is equal treatment between genders. Integrating values such as work-life balance into the company culture will empower employees to ask for flexible opportunities, such as working part-time or working from home, which will allow them to fulfill both personal and professional responsibilities. For organizations that have limitations for whatever reasons in implementing these recommendations, gender balance in human resources is a simple policy which sends a powerful message. Committing to gender balance in all teams, from entry level to management and leadership, will allow team members to gain an understanding of the concerns and challenges faced by both genders, who can then work towards implementing policies and procedures which can mitigate some, if not all, of these challenges. The Conflict Dynamics Profile, or the CDP, defines 4 types of responses to conflicts. Active constructive, which involves effortful responses that directly address conflict in a productive manner. Passive constructive, which also involves productive responses but with minimal effort. Active destructive, which involves effortful responses that actually worsen the conflict. And passive destructive, which involves unhelpful, unproductive responses with minimal effort. A study around the CDP found that men and women will respond to workplace conflict in different ways. Consistent with societal and cultural expectations of being other-oriented, women are more likely to respond with concern for the other party, with higher levels of active constructive behaviors. On the other hand, based on the stereotypical role of being task-oriented, men are more likely to behave in a manner that will allow them to prevail over the other party, exhibiting an active destructive response style. There is an opportunity here for the CDP to inform conflict resolution in the workplace. This would involve 1. Identifying the response behaviors in the CDP, 2. Recognizing the behaviors that we've been conditioned to exhibit based on our gender, and 3. Ideally working together to determine the behaviors most conducive to positive and meaningful conflict resolution given the challenges inherent in virtual work. I'll now pass it over to Bob, who will explore the concepts of education and experience as sources of conflict in the virtual workplace.
Education and accreditation standards vary widely around the world, and international team members can be expected to have very different standards of achievement. Leaders must find ways to balance their team's needs and expectations so that recompense, duties, and expectations are truly balanced and do not become a source of distracting political and strategic maneuvering. Many national education systems appear to be similar on the surface, and in theory, these systems should present similar results. In reality, education systems are heavily influenced by the values and cultures of their own communities. Local teaching pedagogies and resulting outcomes can vary tremendously. International organizations may find themselves with a group of employees who have very similar educational credentials, but in reality, they have very different approaches to work and creativity. Educational philosophies are deeply ingrained in all of us, and they can lead to interpersonal conflicts within virtual teams. For example, most North American schools are quite informal compared to Asian schools, and as adults, we carry these informal attitudes into the world. Deference to teachers, regimentation, and a reliance on rote regurgitation of knowledge are all hallmarks of the Chinese education system and create adults with a very different worldview from North American schools with their informality, their emphasis on creativity, and their strong reliance on activities like sports and music. In much of Asia right now, education requires sacrifice and struggle, and competition is an ever present part of the experience. When these adults go into the workforce, they take these attitudes with them. Some teams will thrive with these patterns of behavior, while others will struggle. Depending on the leader's mindfulness, these cultural gaps may cause disagreements. Leaders need to understand philosophies and encourage those with different values to seek common working ground. Age differences among colleagues can also present a range of potential interpersonal conflicts. The generation gap describes situations that emerge when the values and philosophies of younger and older colleagues conflict. In many modern offices and teams, this translates into conflicts between baby boomers, who are often clustered in the senior positions, the hard-working Generation X, largely in their 40s and 50s, and the younger millennials, who are mainly in their 20s and 30s. Each of these groups came of age in very, very different social and economic environments. And as a result, they bring very different attitudes to business. The can be quite disruptive. Alleviating generational conflicts need not be complicated. Here are three simple rules that you can follow. Number one, check your biases. Make sure that you're not bringing preconceived notions into your workplace, virtual or co-located. Number two, see it their way. Try to be open-minded, try to see others' perspectives, and try not to judge them based on your own prejudices and pre-existing ideas. Finally, stay current. Understand what younger and older colleagues are doing, how they think, what kind of social media they enjoy, what kind of music they listen to, the movies. If you can understand their language, you can speak it yourself. In any team, members may be at very different stages of life. Team members with small children will have less flexibility. Older members may be tasked with looking after elderly parents. Young members may be happy to work evenings and weekends, which in turn would draw protests from others. Often, most of a team will be at one particular stage, with one or two outliers who are struggling to hide that fact. The key to avoiding interpersonal conflicts around stages of life is for management and leaders to recognize they exist, mitigate where they can, value each member's contribution, and encourage members to be mindful that others have different lives and that we all need to work together to accent each other's strengths and not bicker over weaknesses.
By its very nature, the word team suggests a group of people working together towards a common goal. Virtual teams have many unique challenges, not the least of which are identity-based conflicts. In a co-located team, there are well-established paths towards conflict prevention and resolution. However, most of them require a level of personal interaction which is difficult to achieve in the virtual environment. We've looked at 4 particular sources of conflict: culture, gender, education, and experience, how they manifest themselves in a virtual team, and how they might be prevented and resolved. However, with a combination of engaged and approachable leadership, unbiased team members, and truly mindful attitudes to interpersonal conflicts, optimal decision-making and team collaboration is achievable. On behalf of Amanda, Bob, and myself, we'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope that you found it both meaningful and applicable. Thanks again, folks.